Inflație persistentă, lanțuri de aprovizionare perturbate, conflicte comerciale în creștere și o lume tot mai polarizată. Trăim într-un moment în care economia nu mai poate fi separată de politică, de tehnologie sau de securitate, iar deciziile economice pe care le iau guvernele astăzi vor avea efecte pe termen lung asupra tuturor. Încercăm să înțelegem mai clar ce se întâmplă cu economia globală și cum ne afectează aceste schimbări direct pe noi toți. Așa că stăm astăzi de vorbă cu Thomas Hoerber, expert în economie și politici europene și profesor universitar și director la EU Asia Institute din cadrul Școlii Superioare de Științe Comerciale din Angers, adică în Franța. Thomas Hoerber a scris mai multe cărți despre politicile Uniunii Europene. În România a fost tradus doar acest volum pe care vi-l arăt acum la cameră. Pare așa o analiză teoretică a confruntării de idei dintre doi mari autori ai secolului trecut, Friedrich Hayek și John Maynard Keynes, dar poate că e mai mult de atât. Hai să vedem. Mr. Hoerber, thank you for this dialogue.
Thank you very much for the invitation.
So there's an increasing talk of trade wars, tariffs, protectionist policies, I'm sorry. Do you think the world is heading towards a more protectionist era?
I think what you can see, and I guess we come in a bit more detail later to that, is that globalization, as we were used to that in the previous decades, is probably ending or at least weakening. And that we are going to see, or what we are seeing at the moment, is a process of renationalization of economic policies, particularly among the big powers. China and the US are a good example, but Russia is no exclusion for that. In Europe, it's a bit a special case, I guess, because the European integration process has been founded on the premise that the European nations, as they are, Romania, for example, Germany as the biggest one, as the biggest economic power in the common internal market as well, they are too small. They are too small to compete with those big powers such as the United States. And that's the classical European argument, European integration argument, which I think still holds today. And that means probably that globalization as a world phenomenon is going to disappear. In Europe, I think it's going to stay. Otherwise, we are going to go into the direction of independence or of dependence towards those big powers, or even vassal states. As the worst case scenario, I guess.
Yet we see many countries trying to bring back the production of essential goods. Isn't that a sign that globalization might be coming to an end even in Europe?
That depends. I think within the common internal market, there is still a good interest of companies locating their production within the common internal market, but not necessarily within the highest paying countries. So I think particularly countries of Central and Eastern Europe will remain attractive for big European companies such as Volkswagen, such as Airbus, who will nevertheless use the relatively low wages there, which is an economic advantage, if you like, for those companies. To keep the production within the common internal market of the European Union, but not outside of Europe. I think there will be a Europeanization, if you like, of production. Yes, pretty sure.
Do you think this Europeanization of production might be a new form of capitalism with a human face, something between the state and the market, or this is just a temporary phase?
I think there we can perhaps go to the book which you just presented in the introduction, and particularly John Maynard Keynes, with his general theory of employment, was very much aware that his idea was that what in the end matters is that people live well. And in that sense, when they have an income, they can also buy things, and therefore you get economic growth. In contrast to that, you can take the neoliberal perspective, which Friedrich Hayek proposed in 1944, in which he called it the road to serfdom. If you actually use state finances, for example, or state structures such as interest rates in order to frame the economy. So there would be the idea that the market can solve everything and will solve all the problems. That goes back, of course, to John Stuart Mill, to Adam Smith as the classics in economics. But in the end, it's a question of how far you go with economic planning. This is exactly what Hayek criticized. In contrast to Keynes, Keynes would have seen as an ideal that the state uses some of its taxpayers' money in order to stimulate the economy via cyclical investment, counter-cyclical investment. So when the economy goes down, the state puts in a bit of money. When the economy goes up, the state reimburses its debts. Hayek saw this as a bit of a problem. So it depends which perspective you want to take.
We have this presentation, a theoretical, more theoretical one in your book that's been translated in Romania and at Humanitas Publishing House. But
I'm very happy about that, by the way.
To what extent can classical economic theories, such as those of Hayek and Keynes, still guide us in a world dominated by artificial intelligence, climate change, aggressive geopolitics?
That again depends on how you see the economy. For example, chapter 3 in this book talks about planning and information. And Hayek calls this the information gap. So he basically says that even in a perfectly working market, you don't have all the information that is necessary in order to take a completely informed decision. And artificial intelligence might mean that you can get all this information that is necessary in order to arrive at a completely informed decision. Now, at this point, you have to decide whether the market as such is only a collection of information, a mass of information, if you like, and then if you have all this information, you can take the right decision, or if there's perhaps something genuinely human in there, which cannot be captured just by the information. And this is what I guess many would call the information gap. First of all, you don't have all the information, but even if you have all the information, can you really make a comprehensive decision out of that? And I give you another example, which is nevertheless quite telling. In the 1970s in Germany, they tried economic planning by assembling as much information as they could possibly get. And they stopped that experiment because it was simply not possible to arrive at all the information that was necessary in order to take completely informed decisions. I have serious doubts whether artificial intelligence can change that situation, because I think nevertheless there's something very human in how the market and how the economy runs, and I hope it's not just a question of figures on one side and the other side which balance each other out. So I would say that yes, it can clearly be interesting for the stock exchanges, for managing microeconomic situations, but not necessarily. It won't change fundamentally the logic of the market as it is.
We're talking about technology and information, but we cannot separate economics from politics and diplomacy. And we have seen these days that Donald Trump has been one of the promoters of some aggressive trade policies. What economic legacy does it leave, and how is it reflected in current policies, including in Europe?
You mentioned the trade wars or the trade war that has been begun by the United States or already started in the first mandate of Donald Trump. What you can say for Europe is very clearly that it's not beneficial for anyone, certainly not for the smaller states, but really not for anyone. I think when you look at the history of the 1930s, for example, after the great crash of the New York Stock Exchange, it is very clear that the trade policies, trade restriction afterwards, which is the consequence out of trade wars, out of putting in place higher tariffs, didn't benefit the United States either. So it's not just that the smaller states will suffer, that's for sure, I think, but it's also the bigger states that will suffer. And when you look at the history of the United States, I think that was one lesson learned from the economic disaster, which led to quite a considerable extent to World War II. This was seen as the economic reason for leading to World War II. So I think none of them, and this is why I think that the position of the European Commission is actually quite good on that. They say exactly that. No one will benefit from a trade war, and they are trying to find a compromise in order to avoid that. So make no mistake, however, it will be more problematic for the weaker states, and I'm thinking in this case, of course, of Romania. But even for states, even the stronger states, such as economically stronger states in Europe, such as Germany or France, they will have substantial problems, economic problems. And the question then will be, will it break up, and will we basically react to that individually, or will we find a European solution to that? In the past, and based on the experience of the post-war history, usually the reaction will be European. But there may also be, and here we go back to the renationalization tendencies, there will also be nationalist tendencies which will try to draw us in the other direction. I would say the solution here is clearly to stay together, to stick together, and try and find the best solution for everyone there. Of course, the current market fluctuations, which you saw in the past 2 days with wrong information from the White House on something which can plunge the market and increase the market later on, is another good example for that.
My last question is this, because you've considered a rather pessimistic scenario, but you also talk about this in your book, about the effects of aggressive economic policies. And let me quote you. You say here, aggressive economic policies and during the Great Depression trade restrictions, especially rob your neighbor policies, such as prohibitive import tariffs, we've seen as decision designed to favor someone or incite violence. This is what you write in the conclusion chapter, in the concluding chapter. So the question is, can Donald Trump's decision also be understood as the beginning of an economic war? And do you think Trump's tariff policy has led to an escalation of these trade conflicts? What's the end of it?
The answer is very simply yes. And he says that it's the beginning of a trade war, and it will lead to substantial consequences for the world economy, and I think for the national economies, as I said before. Also for the United States, and we see this in export figures of European products. Take the car industry, for example, will suffer quite substantially. I think. Well, we'll see how far the common internal market of the European Union will hold up. I think there's a real hope that it's sufficiently big and sufficiently autonomous that it can withstand that kind of external shock. And who knows, perhaps in the end, the United States might even find that they are no longer the strongest power in this world. Economically, I mean.
Yeah, well, let's live and see about this. Professor Thomas Hoerber, thank you for this brief but very good dialogue. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much for the invitation.
Vă mulțumesc și dumneavoastră că ne-ați urmărit până acum. Laurențiu Ungureanu din studio, Ovidiu Popica, Adi Iacob și Cristina Lazar, pe curând! Mulțumim că ne-ați urmărit! Dacă v-am ajutat să aveți o părere mai informată despre cei care ne conduc și despre faptele lor, ajutați-ne să ajungem la cât mai multă lume. Iar pentru sugestii și reclamații, lăsați-ne un mesaj în comentarii sau pe mail. Noi ne revedem joi, dar știrile continuă pe HotNews.ro.